Did you know that the average person spends almost 2.5 hours a day on social media? If you do the math, that's 75 hours a month, or more than 3 full days wasted on doom scrolling. Which kind of makes you wonder what would happen if you just unplugged and walked away. This urge has been growing in my heart for a while, and I don't know if you would call it a question or a wish or a 30-day challenge, but after a rough few months where it felt like life just kept throwing one curveball after another at me, I decided to quit social media for 30 days, which, let me tell you, as someone who makes a living from social media, was equal parts thrilling and terrifying. But I also knew deep down inside that it was exactly what I needed at that moment, because somewhere between all of the stress, bad news, and nerve-wracking ups and downs, I noticed I was feeling increasingly overwhelmed, unmotivated, drained, and honestly just plain down in the dumps. And as a byproduct of that, I was catching myself picking up my phone and doom scrolling as a way to cope more than I want to admit. So I wanted to unplug, go outside and touch some grass and find out what would happen if I replaced all of that screen time with real life. After all, apparently this year, analog living and going chronically offline is the coolest new trend. So I figured, well, why the heck not? But I never expected just how much this 30-day social media detox would change my life. And by the end of the month, I genuinely felt like I had rewired my brain. So that's why today I'm sharing what happened when I disappeared from social media for 30 days and what I learned when I stopped doom scrolling and started living again. Let's dive in. So one thing I noticed was that my attention, focus, and memory seemed to improve almost immediately right after I quit social media. So some of the signs that have led me to realize that my social media consumption was getting out of control in the past included being unable to do 10 affirmations in a row without losing focus of where I was at. And another sign is that when I will get the codes to enter into some of my work accounts, I was having trouble storing those 8-digit passwords in my working memory long enough to enter them into my computer. It's no secret, as people spend more and more time on social media, attention spans are getting shorter, anxiety and depression are skyrocketing, and IQ score averages are declining for the first time in almost 100 years. And apparently there's even a name for what I've been experiencing myself: brain rot. And it turns out I'm not the only one experiencing this feeling, and Oxford University Press even named brain rot as the word of the year in 2024 after its usage frequency surged by 230% in 1 year. And in case you're not familiar with this Gen Z slang, brain rot basically describes that feeling that you get when your brain feels like it's turning into mush from consuming too much trivial and low quality online content. And obviously, your brain isn't literally rotting, but that doesn't make the side effects of brain rot any less scary. And personally, not being able to remember a 7 or 8 digit code or password long enough to type it into my computer and struggling to stay focused long enough to get through 10 positive affirmations without my mind wandering was a huge wake up call for me. However, within days of quitting social media, I could feel a noticeable difference. My mind felt quieter. I could concentrate longer. I could remember things more easily. And by the end of the first week, it felt like someone had cleared 47 browser tabs out of my brain. And scientific research actually seems to back up my experience. And one study conducted by Harvard researchers with 373 participants found that a 1 week social media detox intervention reduced symptoms of anxiety by 16%, depression by almost 25%, and insomnia by 14.5%. That brings us to the next topic that I wanted to cover with you, which is how to prep for a social media detox. Because planning will always help the process go more smoothly, especially if you're doing it for the first time. One question that you should consider is how long your social media detox is going to last. Are you going to try to do it only for the weekend? Do you want to do a 7-day detox, a 1 month detox, or longer? Obviously, for most people, the longer you want to quit social media, the more challenging that's probably going to be. So, just like with a lot of these sorts of 7-day or 30-day challenges, the first 24 hours is usually pretty easy for most people because you're pretty high on motivation, but motivation is a finite resource. And once that motivation runs dry, then you have to rely on discipline and consistency and other compensatory strategies to get you through those periods of restlessness and temptations. Another thing you might want to consider is asking yourself if you want to quit all social media platforms or just short form platforms such as TikTok and Instagram. I myself decided to quit all social media platforms, but I have seen people do short form only social media detoxes. And because short form media is designed to be extremely addictive and give you those quick dopamine hits and really create fragmented attention, I do think that there can be some benefit to quitting just those forms of social media. But also, there's a lot to be said for doing a complete social media detox if you also want to cut out other forms like YouTube as well. It's also a consideration to ask, are you going to quit input only, or are you also going to quit output if you're a influencer or a content creator? The reason I wanted to bring this up is because most of the content creators I've seen talking about this subject have done a input only social media detox, meaning that they stopped consuming social media but continued to post on social media themselves. And in fact, one of the original I Quit Social Media for 30 Days content creators who posted about this topic, I think it was years and years ago, was fellow minimalist Matt Diavella. And what's funny is that when he was doing his social media detox, he ended up having a video go viral, which completely spiked his views, his subscribers, and his income during that time, which I have to say I'm a little bit jealous about because my views during my social media detox were, and I just have to say that as a content creator myself, I totally get that because when your job and your income literally depend on you posting on social media, it can be hard to walk away from that, knowing you're not going to make as much money and fearing that you're risking everything by bringing down the wrath of the almighty algorithm. And that this little 30-day challenge that you've embarked upon might end up ruining your entire channel and get you shadow banned or worse. But even if you're not a content creator yourself, sometimes having financial runway can make all the difference in the world because taking a break is a lot easier when you know it's not going to break your budget. And that's exactly why I'm always preaching about mindful spending, budgeting, and having an emergency fund here on my channel. Because saving money isn't just about watching a number go up in your bank account, it buys you options and freedom. Freedom to step away from work to deal with an emergency, the freedom to be there for someone that you love, or even to disappear for days or months at a time without panicking about lost income. I didn't start out my adult life with that kind of freedom. It's something that I earned through years of hard work and saving money to pay off $250,000 worth of debt and then climb the mountain of financial independence, which is why I'm so passionate about this topic. And I believe that everyone has the ability to change their financial future. So if you don't have that kind of financial cushion yet, I will be sure to link to some of my videos about budgeting, saving money, and mindful spending down below for you so that money is never the thing that holds you back when you need to step away. One thing about me is that, for good or bad, I tend to be an all or nothing girly. And because I'd been feeling so drained and burnt out from the emotional past few months that included the illness and loss of a loved one, I really just wanted to quit cold turkey and use that month of no social media to hit the reset button on my life. And speaking of which, that brings me to point number 3, which is that social media detoxes like this are a great time to do a life audit and tease out which areas of your life you're dissatisfied with so that you can get more clarity and direction for yourself and your goals. One of my favorite ways to do a life audit is to fill out a life balance wheel chart because it gives you a very visual and easy to digest feedback about what areas of your life are okay and what areas might need a little bit more attention or improvement. And when I was filling out my life balance wheel assessment, I immediately noticed that the areas that felt most out of balance were health and fitness, family and friends, and fun and recreation. And as far as health and fitness, that's actually something that I discussed in one of my last videos about micro habits to heal your nervous system, because I noticed that after so much stress and problems in my life, my cortisol levels had spiked and left me feeling weak and dysregulated. So, one huge area of focus for me during this time was lowering my cortisol levels through gentle exercises, breathing exercises, and things like meditation and affirmations. And the craziest thing is that the moment that I stepped away, not only did I feel my cortisol levels immediately dropping, but I was also able to actually observe it in real time. Because I've been doing regular in body scans since the beginning of the year to track the results of the fitness challenges I've been doing over the past 8+ months. And I got to see in real time how my skeletal muscle mass bounced back up and my body fat percentage dropped when I quit social media. Even though, between you and me, I kind of totally pigged out during this challenge, but we'll talk more about that later. But that's why I've said it before, and I'll say it again 100, 1,000, or a million times if I need to. That is exactly the reason that stress is called the #1 silent killer. And as it turns out, rehabilitating my health and fitness also went hand in hand with having fun with my family. And my husband and I coordinated our schedules so that we were able to take time off to spend time on experiences and building fond memories with our kids. And we also finally made time to do something that we'd been talking about for years, which was taking our kids on a trip to Maui, which is where we celebrated our honeymoon 16 years ago. And I'm so glad we did, because all of us walked away from that vacation saying it was the best one we've ever been on. And some of our family favorite experiences included taking a zipline tour that went over waterfalls and the gorgeous forests of Maui. And sometimes we even had literal rainbows and double rainbows in the background as we were flying over bamboo forests and seeing things like bananas and coconuts growing below. And one of the other biggest highlights was visiting a natural area called the Olivine Pools and marveling at the little sea creatures and plant life we saw there, which my youngest son, Didi, was especially fond of because he is just a little marine biologist in the making. We didn't even have to go outside of the hotel to have fun experiences. And in fact, one of my kids' favorite things to do was get up early and go to the front counter at our hotel, where they were able to get a special coin to get fish food to feed the koi fish in the ponds of the hotel every morning. And we also got a huge kick out of seeing all of the wild chickens and roosters roaming around everywhere. Not to mention all of the delicious food that we ate. And by sheer coincidence, we ended up at not one, but two restaurants that had been featured on Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives by Guy Fieri. And I have to say, the food there was totally amazing. But please don't think that you have to travel thousands of miles to have fun experiences, because we were able to find plenty of fun experiences to have right in our backyard. This 100% is an alien spaceship pretending to be a cloud.
Yeah,
There's no way that isn't an alien spaceship.
Can I make it more obvious?
Yeah, bro, like we see you.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Oh my goodness. There's not another cloud around except for that one. And we also had a ton of fun on a day trip to Indiana Dunes that was only a 1.5 hour drive from our home, where we not only completed something called the 3 Dune Challenge to climb 3 huge sand dunes in that gorgeous park, but after completing the 3 Dune Challenge, we also swam in Lake Michigan and were so impressed by the beach and the nature all around us. And now that I'm back to work feeling refreshed and re energized, I plan to do that life audit principle all over again because I feel like the cups that were once empty now spilleth over. And if you want to join me in doing a life audit yourself, I will be sure to link to the exact principle that I used that comes in this 6 page workbook that I created about how to change your entire life with the 80/20 rule. And be sure and stay tuned because I have an exciting announcement related to that 80/20 rule workbook that I'm going to be sharing tomorrow. And also, I think that this is a good time to say that if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, be sure to go down and hit the subscribe button and turn on all notifications so that you don't miss out on that announcement and all of the helpful videos that I have planned for the upcoming months. The next topic I wanted to cover with you is related to analog habits and hobbies. And I know this has been a very trendy topic for this year in particular, but I think that analog hobbies and habits go hand in hand with the idea of living chronically offline and doing social media detoxes. And some of the analog hobbies and habits that I focused on during my social media detox included keeping up with the reading goals that I'd set for myself this year, which is to read at least 1 book per week, some mending and dyeing projects for my wardrobe that I'd been meaning to tackle for a while, and some unexpected DIY projects for our home and garden. But going back to reading, like I said, I set the goal that I wanted to read or listen to at least 1 book or audiobook each week of the year. And I'm glad to say that I have stuck to that goal. And I was able to even complete some extra books and audiobooks during my 30-day social media detox. And here you can see the complete list of the books and audiobooks that I finished during this time. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is how over the years, a lot of us have gotten used to reaching for our smartphones whenever we're bored or when we're feeling stressed or lonely. So stopping your hand from reaching for your phone means that you have to learn how to literally retrain your body and your mind. I like to call it itchy palm. It's almost like you get this itch in your palm or your fingers where you want to reach out and grab for your phone and start scrolling through. So you need to have a plan on how to handle that feeling of getting those itchy palms. Also, I just want to say that I know there are products you can buy to help you if you struggle with extreme addiction to doom scrolling and social media, such as Brick, which friends of mine have used with great success. But I personally try to avoid purchasing new products to fix my problems right off the bat, because that's led to a lot of impulse buys, wasted money, and clutter for me in the past. Which is why nowadays I start by focusing on changing my identity and habits first, and save buying products as a last resort, or at least until I've gained proof of concept that a product is a good fit for me. And luckily, I was able to use analog hobbies and habit swaps with great success as an antidote to interrupt the urge to doom scroll when I got that itchy palm feeling. The habit swaps that I used depended on my physical locations. For example, I used to watch YouTube videos as a passive activity while I was at the sink doing the dishes or standing next to the bed folding laundry. So instead of watching YouTube, I decided to swap out YouTube videos with listening to audiobooks instead. And another time when I noticed I tended to doom scroll was when I was sitting on the couch or relaxing in the bed before bedtime. And during those times, I swapped out reaching for my phone with the habit of reading a book. And speaking of which, that's another point I wanted to bring up, which is that you need to raise your awareness of your doom scrolling habits and triggers so that you can avoid them in the future. I'm a huge fan of habit tracking, and that's something that really helped me navigate this 30-day social media detox. Because when I became more aware of the routines and locations where I tended to doom scroll, it was a lot easier for me to interrupt those habits and patterns of behavior. So, for example, if you're someone who always reaches for their phone first thing when you wake up in the morning, it might be a good idea for you to stash your phone in a kitchen drawer at the end of the night before you go to bed so that it's not there when you have the inclination to reach for it when you wake up. For me, I'm someone who always liked to watch YouTube videos whenever I'm exercising at home or at the gym, so I decided to cut out that screen time and replace it with silence. Although maybe silence isn't the right word because both the gym and my desk treadmill are extremely noisy. So I did keep my noise canceling headphones in my ears during the time when I was exercising. And at times I did still have voice commands from my workout coaching app enabled in the background to help me stay on track with my exercise routine. But other than that, I was mostly alone with my thoughts, which I found boosted my calm and creativity. Because the less attention I was paying to other people's lives, the more appreciative and joyful I felt towards my own life. And finally, the last thing I wanted to bring up here might be a little bit controversial, but that is that simply being able to unplug is an immense privilege. That reminds me of that famous quote from William Shakespeare's Hamlet: "To unplug or not to unplug? That is the question." That's totally how that quote went, right?
Ladies and gentlemen, what do you think Shakespeare meant by that? Those are powerful words in here, right?
But all jokes aside, one thing that no one talks about when it comes to this topic of unplugging and living chronically offline is how much of a privilege it is to be able to choose that lifestyle in the first place. And I'm reminded about a story about the director Christopher Nolan that went viral recently because during my social media detox, I was still keeping up with the news here and there. And there was a lot of chatter about Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, and while most of it was positive, there was also some controversy around the fact that Nolan said that he doesn't own a smartphone and doesn't use email, which is kind of amazing considering he's an Oscar-winning director and you would think kind of makes him a digital minimalist icon. But when I started digging into this story, I found an interview with Matt Damon, who has now worked with Christopher Nolan on 3 movies, the latest of which was The Odyssey, and he explained that it's Nolan's wife who's picking up the slack and handling a lot of the communication that's happening behind the scenes in the background.
Okay, so Christopher Nolan is famous for not being able to use a cell phone and not having emails. And then when you go into this article, you're like, okay, but how does he do his job? Because remember, like, he would have a huge job. You would editors, cinematographers, actors, team members. Like, how would you coordinate all of that? How would you have your vision and like be able to communicate to people, adjust things on the fly? Oh, his wife, right? There's a, hey, Matt Damon, Chris is going to call you today. Can you make sure to answer his calls? Okay. So you're telling me this, I want you to back up a bit, and I want you to imagine that you met this man in the 90s, and he's a talented artist. And then the email and the internet comes along, and he's just like, no, I have to protect my artistry. And then meanwhile, you're like, oh, okay. I see some of you being like, well, she just organizes his admin stuff. No. She's been winning those Oscars. She's been winning those BAFTAs alongside him. But you know what the world loves to talk? Talk about a male genius who's just like, I can't use a phone. I need this pockets of boredom to stare out the window and remain inspired. He really is so intense on set with his creativity. I was like, no, he has a wife, Emma. Emma is the brains behind this, okay?
And it kind of got me thinking, when you look at the analog trend and how living offline is the new cool, it's like we've created this weird reverse status symbol, kind of like how getting manicures and pedicures and getting your nails done are no longer the status symbol that they once were, and now having bare nails is the new status symbol. And now it's gotten to the point where something that was once seen as being old-fashioned and might even get you called an out-of-touch dinosaur for not having a smartphone or for being on social media has now flipped into a signal of quiet luxury. And the harsh truth is, it's one thing if you choose to unplug, and it's quite another if that choice is made for you. And quite ironically, I actually got to experience this the hard way in the middle of my social media detox when a terrible storm knocked out the power and internet in our town for 5 days. And let me tell you, that so-called romantic analog lifestyle isn't so romantic. When you're showering at the gym because you don't have hot water, and you're scrambling to find a generator before all of your groceries go bad. Because the truth is that our modern society is designed to keep us online and addicted to our smartphones. And being truly offline is actually really hard because more often than not, our jobs, our businesses, our banking, our communication, and so much of our modern life depends on us being connected. And not everyone has the luxury to simply opt out of that. So maybe the real flex isn't being chronically online or chronically offline. Maybe it's about having enough control over your time and your attention that you get to decide when you want to be connected and when you want to unplug. And if that sounds good to you, you're in luck because that's literally what my entire channel is all about. And like I said, I have a few big announcements coming up, so be sure to stay tuned for those. And until then, you can go and check out one of these videos that YouTube thinks that you'll like, or I'll see you next week. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.